Being an amazing product marketing leader doesn't happen by chance. It happens by habit. Product marketing certified leadership has been built on the back of decades worth of experience from some of the world's best known brands with one goal in mind: helping you be the best leader you can be. Crammed with real life case studies, over 12 hours worth of content, templates, exams, and more, this course is everything you need to lead with authority, confidence, influence, and innovation. Every piece of material within the 7 modules and 29 chapters has been vetted, tested, and approved by senior level product marketers from companies like Amazon, Uber, and HubSpot, serving up game-changing insights throughout. By the time you've wrapped up the final module, you'll be able to define what it takes to be a great product marketing leader, build and scale your team, understand how to successfully manage your existing team, use methods for leveraging data, know how to become the voice of the customer, understand how teams work cross-functionally, and improve your strategic thinking. The beauty of the course is you'll have the freedom to work your way through the modules at a pace to suit you. It's 100% self-paced. You'll even get lifetime access to the curriculum, paving the way for refresher sessions forevermore. Visit productmarketingalliance.com to get leadership certified and spearhead your journey to the top.
Hi there, my name's David Parker. I'm the head of product marketing at Xero. I'm really excited to be here today and share with you some of my experiences around shaping the role of product marketing within the product development lifecycle. I'll probably spend the next 20 minutes or so just going through some of these learnings that I've actually had over the years and getting some feedback from you guys. I'm really interested to hear about your journeys, if you can share any of that on the threads below, but also so we can actually try and push the conversation forward a little, because over the last couple of years I've seen some amazing content come out, and have been interested in myself to actually take a role within product over the last few years and come back into product marketing, which has given me a lot of interesting insights to come from one side over to the other, and realize that perhaps some of those challenges that I was having as a product marketer were less of a challenge and more of an opportunity. So a little bit about me. You can probably tell from my accent that I am a Brit. So I was originally, I started my career over in the UK before moving to New Zealand. I was lucky enough to work for some really great brands, really customer focused, both in the tech space and fast moving consumer goods. One of the interesting things is actually that whilst I spent a lot of my career focused on building great customer value propositions, I never actually held the role of a product marketer until I joined Xero. So one of the things that I found instantly gratifying was the fact that this term product marketing was just able to bring together so many different disciplines that unofficially floated around the business, and actually being able to be that custodian of the customer within a business was just an amazing thing. So a little bit more about Xero, where I hone my craft today. Xero is an online accounting platform that's really focused on providing a beautiful accounting experience. I know that sounds hard to believe, but as a real design-focused organization, a real customer-focused organization, what we seek to do is to basically rip up the playbook on how small businesses do their accounting, how they work with their accountants as well, and really make the most of the amazing work that's done in supporting small business across the globe. Now, it wouldn't be a SaaS company overview without a hockey stick. Here's ours. We started in about 2006, and certainly within the last few years, we've really scaled quite significantly across the globe. Have roughly around 2.5 million customers now. And here's some more numbers that I can baffle you with. So we're used by customers in about 180 countries. Thankfully, we're not in 180 countries currently, because that would be quite an interesting stakeholder matrix. But one of the things that I'm certainly really lucky enough to have seen over the last few years is actually just how we've scaled as a business. And added some amazing functions and bolstered some amazing functions like product marketing. So we're up to around just over 3,000 Xeros across the globe now. Here's my shameless plug. Join us on the Xero Careers channel and check us out. We've got heaps of roles being hired across the globe at the moment. But specifically, what I wanted to really highlight is, with the scale that we now have as a business, we have a huge opportunity as product marketing to again double down on that idea of being the custodian of that customer value proposition, and just making a really, really powerful stance on how we can think about the way in which we shape our product development, and being a real co-pilot, is the way that I tend to see it, to product development. Now, a few little credentials that are worthwhile covering off as we start, just to highlight the way in which we run product marketing. So the first thing is, product and product marketing are within the same organization. So the ability to actually be part of that same organizational structure is a great vantage point for us to work really closely with that product development process. In terms of the discussion on product marketing seat at the table and how senior that has got, I'm really stoked that over the last few months we've taken a big step forward in that, in having an amazing new product marketing leader in the business. Hey Jen, if you're watching, join the business. And actually really elevate that conversation of product marketing at the product leadership table. So myself and 4 other product marketing leads work really closely with that leader to make sure that we are escalating those conversations to the very highest level, to make sure that we are really focused on creating great customer value propositions. What I'll go into now is just some of those initial learnings that I've actually had recently, as I mentioned, from going through my career journey at Xero, from being in product and product marketing. And I think it answered a lot of things for me in quite a confronting way, which is a really great story for me to be able to share with you guys today. So the first thing I wanted to really focus on was actually the role of product management. I don't want to go into this too much. There certainly is enough content around the role of product management in SaaS in particular. But one of the things I think product managers do really well is to actually just distill down this idea of the product development process simply being a way of taking a very focused approach of aligning the external environment with the internal capability that we have to arrive at some amazing customer value. Now, one of the biggest things that I was excited about when going from a product marketing role into a product management role was being able to take that super focused view of the customer value proposition, and thinking about the nuance of the message in prioritizing the roadmap, thinking about new segments that we could be developing as part of existing product strategies, etc. And one of the biggest pieces of inspiration for me was actually from one of my big SaaS company crushes, HubSpot. I'm sure many of you guys use this. As a business, I find them very forward thinking in terms of the way that they think about the relationship between product marketing activities and product activities as they may have been seen in the past. And that's really with a very matrixed view between thinking about short and long term market opportunities, and also the short and long term of how we're building the product out with all of those necessary hard calls to make through the process. So in saying that, one of the biggest things that I learned when I went into product management was actually, it was a little bit more like this. One of the things that I never quite understood before going into a product role was actually the fact that the complexity of dealing with what was essentially a live product that we are constantly trying to iterate brings with it a level of challenge that essentially takes away a lot of the time and space to be able to think as a product manager around the customer and the value proposition, and more focused around how we could optimize teams to be able to deliver in the best value. Now, what I soon learned was actually the best way in which I could actually continue to cover a really customer-focused view was to be able to work collaboratively with a product marketer. I very quickly went from a place of thinking, I know how to do product marketing, that's great, and thinking I would do it all myself, and actually, it's just such a critical thing. The product managers need someone by their side who's able to focus on that. So I think that was such a big learning for me in thinking that this can only ever work in an optimal way if product managers work with product marketers side by side. In saying that, one of the really interesting things that I noticed from some of the data shared in the State of Product Marketing report was between 2019 and 2020, we actually went backwards slightly in terms of product marketing, working with product management to shape the roadmap. Now, I found this really interesting because obviously it's been a really challenging year. Between 2019 and 2020, heaps has gone on. The world has changed. The way in which we structure our teams has changed in many organizations. But I think it's a really important thing to ponder on, because if product marketing is to add the value that it has the potential to do in all organizations, then this balance must change. And it must become much closer to 100%. So in saying that, one of the things that I have also experienced in my career within the product marketing space is actually how to make sure that as a product marketer, you are being able to, for the want of a better word, control that process of getting to market. And one of the things that I had to really quickly learn was actually, if you as a product marketer aren't in that pod, if you're not involved in that product development process, things will progress without you. There's a very well-oiled machine and it moves at pace, and thank goodness it moves at pace, because certainly in SaaS it has to. But sometimes it can feel a little bit like this cartoon. I use this in presentations all the time, so anyone who's at Xero has probably seen this from me many times. Apologies. But one of the biggest things that I always laugh about is just this way of thinking about throwing over the fence a product to marketing. That is like never the place that anybody ever wants to be in an organization, for many reasons: misalignment, losing the opportunity to make the most of a product launch, getting the targeting wrong, getting the messaging wrong, all of these different things that can actually really mean that great product actually doesn't come to great outcome. So it's something that is a big consideration for me, both in terms of how to work, support my team to work best with product management. But the single biggest thing that I always try to advocate is this idea of putting our hands up and actually saying that we want to be involved. We want to be able to find a way of actually being part of those conversations in a scalable way, to ensure that we're always bringing forward that value proposition view. One of the things that's happened at Xero over the last 12 months or so is that we have taken a much more officiated stance within that product development process. that is, for me, one of the biggest achievements that I've ever seen in a product marketing space, and something I was really, really stoked to see as a product stakeholder at the time when this started to evolve. But I think one of the biggest things that I would say, knowing that many organizations don't quite yet have a structure where everyone has their part to play in a very linear process, is actually the most important thing to harbor is that relationship. The relationship between a product marketer and a product manager is such an important one and needs to sit right at the very, very heart of success as a product marketer. Actually, the level of understanding that a product marketer has of their product management stakeholder in terms of their strengths, their weaknesses, their needs, in order to make sure that the product developed is really focused on that customer and market outcome is just such a critical skill. Now, the next part that I'm going to go into is very much related to that previous slide I showed that basically outlined that product marketing pod. This one right here. Now, where we get to in scenarios like this is that essentially there will be a process. And goodness me, product marketing is very, very good at coming up with processes. It's one of the things that I sometimes find the most interesting about the way that we can shape up our teams for success. But earlier on in my career, I had to learn very, very quickly that whilst we can create amazing lucid charts, slides with slide decks with 30 plus pages, this doesn't necessarily mean change. And in particular, within the product space, the processes that product hold with technology, with their other counterparts, is so rigorous and so encompassing that actually the opportunity for product marketing is never to achieve revolution with a process. It's only ever to evolve. Now, the way in which I started to think about that actually even changed further as I came back out of product into product marketing again, thinking about this whole idea of being able to effectively revolve around a product marketing framework, a product management framework rather. So here's the usual kind of overview of Agile, Kanban, sprints, Scrum, the backlog, all of these tag words, which sometimes to a product marketer who hasn't been involved in a product development process before can sound like something that is very time consuming to be a part of. But I think one of the biggest things to learn about this is actually just getting involved enough to understand how we can shape our approach to have the biggest success. Here's the classic burn down chart, and a way that I try to summarize the thinking for our team in terms of how much we get involved, which is essentially there's 3 stages with going about this product development process for us to consider. At the beginning, we're going to work with product stakeholders to think about, okay, there's generally some opportunities that we're going to want to explore. Then go into the next process about learning what that actually takes to achieve those critical jobs to be done. And then actually that final process of getting to a minimum viable product that we can shape a value proposition around. Now, this is super interesting for a product marketer to think about how they're to spend their time. But actually, one of the biggest things that I see as success is actually being able to understand those milestones for us as product marketers, rather than necessarily investing heaps of time in going through every single piece of detail. And again, that comes back to that relationship with the product manager. One of the things that I tend to look at for the milestones within our team is thinking about that first step. Do we understand the customer opportunity and the problem? We're probably still a way away from understanding what that value proposition is, and that's okay. But just actually understanding the general landscape is super interesting. And again, there's heaps of collaboration that can go on between a product manager and a product marketer in that space, thinking about things like competitor analysis and looking at, segmenting the TAM into effective SAM and different exercises like this. Now, as time progresses, that view of the total addressable market, the serviceable addressable market, and how we're going to achieve those key jobs to be done, then gets into this idea of this is where we think we're going to progress to as a product team. So that's the first time a product marketer can actually step up and start exploring what's a cool value proposition. How can we start working backwards from this? Quite often, even perhaps slightly before this process, things like a draft press release in that classic Amazon style is a way of starting to hone that down. But this is super useful for starting to actually align some of the different teams in the business to understanding that better and to start avoiding some of the inherent risks that come when the marketing teams and other stakeholders in the business are essentially bookended in the process. They might be briefed initially to say that, hey, we're developing this product, and then right at the end, they might then understand, oh, and it looks like this. But again, that's really where product marketing can start to add the value and pulling the insights from the different layers of the business to start iterating on that. And naturally, it's only really towards that last part of where those artifacts like internal playbooks, sales enablement tools, and those deliverables that you might expect to see of a product marketing team start to disperse around the business. But actually, the role of product marketing throughout that whole process has literally been a part of that core squad, and also by piggybacking across the various sprints and different opportunities for them to get involved through that process. So sometimes it's quite a difficult one for a product marketer to think that actually sometimes the output is only seen more towards the end, but there's heaps of other ways in which we need to think about those outputs being shaped through the process. So the next point that I'm going to bring is that could be seen as slightly to the contrary of what I've been saying, but one of the inherent risks of becoming really closely aligned with a product development process is that actually you start to get that groupthink. So when I say groupthink, I mean in terms of really starting to understand the level of complexity that may come between having the idea and having the proposed solution. And that is a great thing for a product marketer to understand because it builds empathy across the business. But one of the inherent challenges is if a product marketer isn't careful, you start getting this process of just bouncing a product manager and a product marketer essentially starting to talk the same language. And that is something really to avoid. In most cases, what I really try to help certainly my team think about is how do we balance the amount of time that we're actually spending on the product management relationship side of things, as well as the go-to-market teams. And the real opportunity cost of not doing that is really that it's the core value of product marketing and actually being able to make sure that we are bringing those insights to the table effectively. One little tool that I've tried to use in the past is sometimes actually just thinking about how much time, you can even do it by looking at your Google Calendar, is how much time have I spent with different stakeholders? And included within those different stakeholders is your other go-to-market peers, specifically product marketing, but really understanding actually how much you're weighting your time towards the different areas, because depending on the type of product marketing role you're in, actually it might mean that you're just spending your time mostly with your product development pod, and there's a huge risk in doing that by not having that broader view. So in kind of building on from that point, taking that broad view across the business is another really amazing piece of value that product marketing can bring. But it actually brings about some of the challenges with knowing what to focus on and what to surface. So one of the big developments in product development that's kind of happened over the years has been this idea of OKRs, and this idea of these single results and metrics that mean so much to a product team and a product delivery process. But actually in a product marketer's mind, there might be many, many more different ideas and achievements that might be softer metrics. They might not be as hard as a particular adoption metric. But then again, they might also be something that is incredibly important from a commercial standpoint. So things like CAC, LTV, other KPIs that exist around customer success functions, bringing those into the product development process in a really, really strict way can be really, really valuable. One of the things, I think is super important, and the question to always be asking is, great, we're going to build a product for a particular segment, but what do we genuinely think that's going to mean from the go-to-market funnel? What is it about those customers that we need to watch out for? And what does it mean that we need to tweak, maybe in the onboarding process or other things that a product manager or a product stakeholder is not always able to get to, just due to the breadth of the consideration. So again, this is where this partnership just becomes so important. And to kind of summarize that, it's really not thinking as much about the output as the outcome. And that outcome can come in many different ways. And we don't always have to be so focused on a single North Star metric, but we can have fun by pulling through all of the different focuses in the business. So these were the key learnings that I kind of really wanted to share. And in a nutshell, I guess I haven't really shared any big light bulb moment or playbook to say, hey, this is how we're going to get much closer to the product development process. But what I will say is actually that there is a mindset and a mantra to product marketing that is just so valuable, which is actually just being comfortable with the uncomfortable. Things like not being able to latch onto a particular framework, for example, that is taken across the whole product organization and taken as the way in which that we always engage in go-to-market processes, can be quite uncomfortable. Relying more on relationships rather than officiated product development frameworks can again be quite difficult to actually know where to focus your time and even what's your role as a product marketer. But I think if we're able to actually take a really close view on actually the different pockets of value that we can unlock as product marketers through that whole value chain, that's really where the fun happens. And that's really where we start to make these big changes across the business. So as I mentioned at the start of this talk, I'm super excited about the next stage that we can go in as Xero. I don't necessarily know where that goes. All I know is that actually it comes through this really great collaboration. And there'll be different things that product marketing can take ownership for, different things that product marketing can lean greater into. But it all comes down to that mindset, those relationships, and as I say, being quite comfortable with it being an evolutionary process. So really stoked for everyone to kind of comment and give thoughts on some of the things that I've shared. But thanks so much for your time, and hope that you enjoy the rest of the rendezvous. Thanks.